Hello. I had made a longer video on the same subject, but I realized that talking for 17 minutes on this point, I think, was probably beating it to death. So I'm going to try and make this super quick. This video, I want to talk about possibility and what the word possible means. Now, philosophically, or epistemically, the definition of what is possible is that it's not possible, or in other words, not impossible. So if something is not impossible, then it's possible. I don't have a problem with that definition. Now, when somebody says it's possible that there's a God, now I have a problem, because you can't actually say, when you say something is possible, you're putting it in the set, definitely, of things that do not contradict themselves and do not contradict the facts. You're making a definite declarative statement. So to say something is possible, you're saying, I know that that proposition does not contradict itself and does not contradict any of the facts, so that it is now able to reside in the set of things that is possible. Now here's an example, a bit more concrete example. This is a four-sided die. It is not possible to roll a 5 or a 6 on this die. Definitely not possible. So I can say 1 to 4 is possible, anything else not possible. If you're going to talk about a God, you can't say it is possible, because to say that it is possible, you have to know everything about that God and everything about the universe in which this God is supposed to exist. And you would have to know that no aspect of that description of God conflicts with any of the facts of that universe. And also, of course, the description of that God does not conflict with the God itself. So the God is not self-contradictory and not contradictory to the universe. Now, I can say for sure the Christian God, the Jewish God, the Islamic God, in fact, any of the gods that at least I've heard of, so all of the mythologies, the different cultural gods, none of them exist, because they all contradict themselves at some point, and they all contradict reality at most points. Evolution destroys the whole idea of biblical creation. So we know that mankind was not specially created. We know that we derive from other species. The DNA evidence is completely and utterly concrete. So we know that man was not poofed into existence, like creationists like to say, from clay. So that's one of the many contradictory things in the Bible. I mean, the Bible contradicts itself all over the place. You know, God is supposedly loving, and yet he burns people in hell forever. God is supposedly just, and yet he burns people in hell forever. God is supposedly all-wise and all-knowing, and yet he makes mistakes time after time after time. I mean, the flood was an example where in the Bible itself he says that God regrets making man. Well, you regret mistakes, right? So, and also if he was all-knowing, he would have known that this was going to happen and would have known that he had to do the flood, and so just skip the whole pre-crap up to the flood and to start there. That's what you do if you had any sense, and supposedly God has sense and he didn't do that. So, I mean, it's just ridiculous to think that the Christian God exists, and it's just as ridiculous to think that the Islamic and the Jewish God exist. So that they're clearly non-starters. But to whether or not some as yet unspecified God exists, for this God to be possible, for you to be able to say with any degree of certainty that this God does not contradict anything in itself or any facts, you would have to know everything about that God. You'd have to know everything about how the God, what it's made of, how it operates, what forces are involved, where it exists in space, how it gets its energy, everything. And generally when we hear about gods, we hear just a few lines of fluffy description. So unless you've got incredibly painstaking detail that you can go over and make sure that nothing in that definition of God contradicts itself anywhere, and nothing in that definition of God contradicts the facts about the universe, if you can't do those things, you can't say that God is possible. You have to say, I don't know. Just like if I was to pick up one of my dice. I mean, I've got a bunch of dice here. I've got the 4, a 20, a 6, a 10, an 8, and a 12. So if I was to pick up one of them and say, can this dice roll a 7? Well, some of the dice that I have can, and some of the dice that I haven't can't. But I haven't shown you all the information you need to make that decision. You don't know which dice I have. So you can't say, yes, that dice could roll a 7, or no, it can't. You can't say either, because you don't know enough. There's some crucial missing bits of information. So the best thing that you can say is, I don't know. In this case, it's a 12-sided, so the answer would be, yes, a 7 is possible, for sure. So that's the difference, is that when you're going to say something is possible, you're saying, I know for sure that it's not impossible. So when Plantinga or any of these theists say that this God is possible or this universe is possible or whatever, what they're really saying, without even being aware of it, is that they know that there's nothing self-contradictory or factually contradictory about this thing that I'm proposing. And they can't know that. So it's not possible, or it's not rational, it's not logical, it's not true to say that you can say something is possible if all you've got is some sort of hypothetical specification. The only time you can say something is possible is when you understand everything about the data set, just like I understand all the different numbers on this die. And I can say definitively, this die will never roll a 29 because it's only a 4-sided dice. That's what possible means. So I want you to be aware of, whenever someone says this is possible, think about it. Think about what they're talking about and whether or not the person using the term possible is actually aware of what this means, and whether or not what they're talking about is self-contradictory, or whether or not they can know whether or not it's self-contradictory or factually contradictory. Thank you.